Good evening. First tonight, the decision by Jersey to break with decades of tradition with the appointment of DFDS as their new ferry provider for the next 15 years. The shock announcement this evening means the Channel Islands now has two companies providing their inter-island sea transport links, although there are fears that Condor will not be able to survive with the significantly reduced business from a Guernsey-only service. Well, Katia Fowler has been following today's developments. So, Kat, what's been the reaction to this then?
Oh, I think primarily relief that a decision has finally been made. You know, I've been talking to those in the business and tourism industry. They say that they're excited to work with a new company and they're pleased that the decision has been made. There obviously are still some details they're waiting for, such as what the schedule will look like, what the fleet DFDS will be using. But tonight, an overwhelming sense that hopefully this will be a good thing for the island.
A year ago, you'd be forgiven for not knowing who this company was. But after months of deciding, you now certainly will. Jersey's government have finally chosen who they want to run the island's ferry service. This means for the first time in decades, the two islands will be serviced by different operators. Guernsey will rely on Brittany Ferries, the majority shareholder of Condor, Jersey hedging their bets on someone new. Although DFDS may be new to these waters, they're not new to the game.
DFDS operate a fleet of 6 ferries out of the Port of Dover, going to 2 ports in France, Calais and Dunkirk. They've been on the route for a very long time. They're a great company to deal with. DFDS is a very large company with deep experience in operating all kinds of vessels. They've got routes throughout, Europe, Scandinavia, and the Mediterranean, in addition to the ones to and from the United Kingdom.
DFDS first came to the fore last year when they trialled one of their largest freight ships. They then went on to trial more, slowly manoeuvring these huge vessels into Jersey's port. Questions are now turning to how inter-island travel will work. Brittany Ferries recently announced they would be reducing services between the islands, with only one a week. But for businesses who ship to both places, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what DFDS will do.
We're really excited. There's great opportunity. We've been working very closely with them in order to best serve our members. We have a meeting set up for Thursday morning for them to meet our members. So right now for us it's all about 2025 reclawing back what's been lost during the delay in this process and actually looking forward and how do we change sea travel? How do we make it an enjoyable experience?
But for those who've been waiting to start thinking about the summer season, any provider is welcome news.
For Channel Island businesses that have freight going to both, they're going to have 2 separate logistic operations, one loading onto a Brittany Ferries going to Guernsey and one loading on a DFDS coming to Jersey. I don't think it's insurmountable, and they will have been looking at that, and I think of some of those companies that we have spoken to already, and I think they'll be partially down the way of working out what they will do. The ifs and buts will have already been determined by the companies involved.
Finally, some clarity, but now a wait to see how the company plan to service the island.
Plenty of reaction there, Kat. Some positive, some needing a bit more convincing, perhaps. But more details have emerged today of the type of service that DFDS are going to run. Yeah, so following the announcement, we were told that should all go well with the signing of the contract, DFDS hope to have their schedule released by the end of next week. Now, in terms of what this means for passengers, the change will mean greater frequency of ferries to the UK and France during peak periods, faster ferries to the UK, 3 new ferries within the next 6 years, which is a pretty significant development, and 2 dedicated high-speed ferries for the summer. Now, for freight users, the agreement will mean more regular freight sailings between France and the UK at peak times. Now, following the decision, Deputy Kirsten Morell, Jersey's Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, said a partnership with DFDS will deliver new investment, including new high-speed vessels, more sailing in peak periods, and a service that is reliable and resilient for islanders, visitors and businesses. So after so many months of not knowing when this was going to happen, finally tonight, some clarity. Katia, thank you very much indeed. Well, the announcement was made following hours of intense discussion between ministers who finally made their minds up this evening. Emma Volney reports from Broad Street, where the decision was made.
Well, at long last, we finally have a decision. Jersey choosing Danish firm DFDS over Brittany Ferries. But the question now is, where does that leave Jersey's relationship with Guernsey? What does it all mean for inter-island travel? DFDS are due to start next March, but will Condor be able to continue until then, given the concerns that this government has raised about their financial status? Remember, this was supposed to be a joint tender process between Jersey and Guernsey. That process completely failed and eventually led to completely different outcomes for both islands. And Jersey has taken far longer to make up its mind. Today, ministers were inside this building thrashing out the detail, spending hours and hours talking, which gives you a sense of the complexity of the decision they had to make. Choosing DFDS is controversial. It is a huge change. Make no mistake, this is an historic moment, and it means that Jersey will be saying goodbye to Condor, which has been part of island life for decades. But it's a change that Jersey's government clearly felt was necessary. After weeks of delay and indecision, tonight businesses, islanders, finally have certainty. Jersey choosing DFDS to be its next ferry operator.
Well, George Holland is in charge of the DFDS forum in the UK. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening, George. And firstly, the decision's only been made within the last few hours, but what's your initial reaction?
I think this is a very bold and possibly even a courageous decision by the Jersey government, considering historically every time this contract has come up for review, Guernsey and Jersey have always stuck with the incumbent, Condor. They're offering a new vision, new investment, and potentially this is really exciting in terms of ferry travel for the Channel Islands in the future.
Yeah, as you say, it is exciting potentially for Jersey, but can DFDS really deliver what they say?
I think you can look at their history. They've been around for 150 plus years now, and they are a very successful company. They're one of the biggest ferry companies in the world. But to give an example of the ability of the company to react quickly, after Brexit took effect, they managed to get a service from the Republic of Ireland to France underway within a few months. And that's doing extremely well now.
Which is good to hear. Now, plenty of people have been worried about inter-island travel and how that will suffer or perhaps benefit from this deal. What do you think?
I think actually this potentially is good news for inter-island travellers because we don't know yet the details of what Brittany Ferries and DFDS plan to offer, but potentially we could have two operators instead of one between the islands, and that probably would be good in terms of keeping fares down, more competitive for travellers, and potentially more options for sailing times and day trip opportunities. They do already plan to build 6 vessels which will run eventually entirely on electricity, and therefore there are already ideas on the drawing board which could be adapted and are made more suitable for the Channel Islands market.
With regard to Brittany Ferries and Condor, there are now big concerns on their side of things as far as their future is concerned. Do you share those concerns?
I think Brittany Ferries is a very resilient company. It's a very clever company. They have certainly cornered the Western Channel market over the last few decades. I think they will be able to make a success of a Guernsey-only service by integrating it more closely with their services to, for example, Cherbourg and Saint Malo.
And finally, just sum up your thoughts, if you would, with regard to, one more time, really what this deal means.
I think this is probably one of the most significant developments in the history of Channel Island ferry travel in a very long time. More importantly, for the tourism industry, may well actually drive more interest in visitors to the islands. When you have two companies competing for that attention, I think more effort inevitably will go into trying to encourage more visitors.
And that is where we will leave it. George Holland, in charge of the DFDS forum in the UK, thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're very welcome.
And that's where we'll leave the news of the ferry decision and get the weather with Lily.